Black man's house destroyed by racist gang. Unaware he is the most dangerous Navy SEAL. When a hero returns with bloodied hands for his country, what greets him is not open arms or a flag, but hatred and humiliation, right on the soil he once bled to defend. Liam Baker came back to Hartford after 12 years away, but he was no longer the young man he once was. At 36, he was a former commander of SEAL Team 6, the U.S. Navy's most elite unit. He had led top-secret missions from Kandahar to Somalia, survived hell where stray bullets had no names, where life and death orders were 3 breaths apart. He had taken a bullet for a teammate, rescued American hostages on the Syrian border in an operation no news outlet dared to mention. Over 1,400 days in service, nearly 80 special operations, and 6 times he had come within inches of death in foreign lands. All he wanted now was a bit of peace. A small house in the southern neighborhood of Hartford, where his mother once grew lavender, where he and his sister Cole grew up to Sunday morning jazz. But as his 2014 Ford pickup turned onto the familiar street, Liam's heart sank. The wind carried the smell of smoke and hate. The front of his house had been spray-painted in blood-red letters. Nah. Go home. Under the flickering streetlight, the paint was still wet, dripping like blood. The windows were shattered, curtains singed, the white fence chopped into segments as if someone had tried to sever the house from the community. Right in the middle of the yard, the family's old American flag, the one he had brought home from Afghanistan, lay scorched and half buried in the dirt, a symbol of loyalty betrayed. The wooden house number sign, 1147, was flipped upside down, and beneath it, a reeking trash bag, inside the rotting carcass of a dead animal. Across the street, 5 white men, shaved heads, T-shirts emblazoned with white power symbols, stood drinking beer, laughing, pointing. One of them, a large man with a jagged scar running from his forehead down to his left cheek, rose when he saw Liam step out of the vehicle. His name was Saint, the unofficial leader of a local extremist group called the Sons of Valo, once investigated by the FBI but never formally charged. "Welcome back, Marine," Saint said, his voice dripping with mockery. Liam didn't respond. His eyes scanned the house walls pockmarked with holes, swastikas crudely drawn in black paint, a shattered bottle on the steps, and dried bloodstains, as if someone had been beaten there. He stepped out of the truck, each footfall slow but heavy. His hand brushed his waistband, where, in battle, his M9 combat knife had once been sheathed, the symbol of survival and readiness. But today, he carried no weapon, only resolve. Saint stepped closer, now barely a meter apart. He tossed the beer bottle to the ground. It shattered, foam splashing onto Liam's boots. "We decide who gets to live here," Saint growled. "And you're not one of them." Liam still said nothing. He didn't retreat. He didn't flinch. His eyes reflected the ashes of the burnt flag, and then the face of Saint himself, the embodiment of hatred. But beneath the calm exterior, something had begun to shift. Not rage, but preparation. Preparation for something none of them were expecting. Because Saint and the others didn't know that the man they were provoking was the worst nightmare they would ever face. If you've enjoyed the story so far, take a moment to hit subscribe so you don't miss more gripping, powerful stories from Black Strength Stories. On the razor's edge between brutality and control, only one kind of man doesn't flinch, the kind who has looked death in the eye and kept walking. Liam Baker was that kind of man. The shatter of glass exploded from the porch as the first man charged in with a metal rod. But in the span of a single breath, Liam had already pivoted, hooked an arm under the attacker's armpit, and used the man's momentum to slam him into the ground. A crack sounded. Collarbone snapped. The man screamed in agony. His phone flew from his hand. The camera shattered, and the live stream ended in a flickering black and white screen. The second man, a tall brute with buzzed blonde hair, rushed forward holding a whiskey bottle. But Liam had seen this before, hundreds of times in Iraq. Fools who thought crude weapons could scare someone who had survived RPG ambushes. He dropped low, wrapped his arms around the man's waist, and locked him into a Kimura hold, twisting the shoulder until the arm dislocated. The attacker howled, dropped to his knees, and vomited onto the grass. Liam didn't stop. A sweeping leg kick took down a third man face first, followed by a right hook to the chin, hard enough to send the man's cap flying off. And Saint? He didn't charge in. He stood there, like a predator caught off guard by prey that bites back. His eyes were no longer mocking, but cold and calculating. He was memorizing, analyzing, and waiting for an opening. The biggest man of the group, nicknamed Bison, nearly 240 pounds, 6 feet 3 inches, a former nightclub bouncer in Dallas, bellowed like a maddened bull and charged Liam. Fatal mistake. Liam rotated a quarter turn, dropped his center of gravity, and delivered a spinning roundhouse kick square to the chest. The man flew backward, slamming into a public steel trash can. The clang echoed. He didn't get up. Another man lunged with a left hook. This time, Liam couldn't dodge completely. The punch slashed across his left cheek, carving a gash nearly 2 inches long. Blood seeped, the taste of iron pooling at the corner of his mouth. But Liam only clenched his jaw. He'd survived worse. Once in Kunduz, he had stitched a deep thigh wound with fishing line while trapped in a bunker. Sensing the shift, the 2 remaining men began to back away. One turned and bolted, dragging the other with him. But Saint screamed from behind, a madman losing control. "Stop! I didn't give the order!" No one listened anymore. Amid the blood-streaked lawn and scattered groans, Liam still stood, blood running from his cheek, sweat matting his brow, body coiled like a bowstring. He stared directly at Saint. Didn't chase, didn't curse, just delivered a single warning, carved in stone. "You should leave. Before I change how I handle this." Saint squinted, furious and humiliated. He knew if he stayed, he might be the next to fall. But he couldn't help himself. Had to leave a threat behind, like a creature addicted to ruling by fear. "Don't think you've won, Marine. I'll be back. And next time, no one is saving you." Without another word, he retreated into the shadows of the houses, lit by flickering porch lights. Night fell like a mourning shroud. Liam didn't call the police, didn't go to the hospital. He opened the old medical kit inside his home, still holding the same surgical needle used in Mogadishu, along with disinfectant gauze and nylon thread. Beneath the dim yellow glow of the overhead light, he extracted the tiny shard of glass from his cheek, biting down without making a sound. Outside, Hartford sank into silence. But inside the soldier, a storm had begun to rise, and this storm would not quiet easily. Not every battle begins on the battlefield. Some confrontations start right at your doorstep, when justice goes silent and cowardice hides behind the curtains. Liam stood motionless, razor-sharp eyes locked on the group of men gathered in the middle of the street that had once been the path to his childhood. Without a trace of hesitation, he spoke in a voice deep and commanding like an order on the drill field. "Get off my property. Now." The air tightened for a second. Then Saint burst out laughing as if he'd just heard an old joke. He shrugged, glancing back at the others. "Y'all hear that? SEAL Team 6 is giving orders." He turned back, eyes suddenly dark. "Cops around here drink with us. Who do you think is going to save you?" One of the men, a short, bald guy with a scruffy goatee, stepped behind Liam's truck and kicked the license plate hard. It clattered to the concrete with a cold metallic clang. "Virginia, huh?" he shouted. "You're an uninvited guest. Go back to your muddy little hole, traitor." Liam still didn't move, but his body tightened like a bow being drawn. His fingers curled into fists, veins bulging beneath his sun-darkened skin. He didn't respond, didn't speak, just breathed deeply and glanced over his shoulder, toward the windows with half-drawn curtains, where the eyes of neighbors hid in shadow. No one stepped out. No one yelled, "Stop!" No one called 911. Then, a plastic bag sailed over the fence, landing right in front of the house. It burst open. Inside were pieces of toilet paper smeared with dog feces and smoldering charcoal ash. The stench hit hard and fast. Liam clenched his jaw, but didn't take a step forward. Saint, as if choreographing some sick play, slowly walked closer. The distance between them shrank to just a few inches. He lifted his Budweiser bottle, raised it like offering a toast, then suddenly dumped half of it onto Liam's boots. "Hit me," he said quietly, voice low, like a whisper of poison. "I'm waiting." The air thickened, ready to ignite. One of the men pulled out his phone, camera already rolling. "Let's go viral. Black Seal snaps and beats down the Good Towns folks," he laughed. Liam stared into each of their eyes, as if etching their faces into memory, or a list that would later be settled. "I'll give you exactly 10 seconds to get off this property. After that, what happens is out of my control." Saint threw his head back in laughter, like someone who'd never tasted fear. Liam began counting, each beat like the ticking of a bomb. 10, 9, 8. But before he could say 7, the group in front of him was no longer laughing. One of them yelled, "Get him!" And they charged like a pack of wolves. The first punch flew toward Liam's face, but he dodged instinctively, pivoted his stance, deflected the second blow with his elbow, and dropped the attacker with a punch to the chest that sent him stumbling like he'd been hit by a truck. Another man swung a baseball bat at Liam's shoulder, but it only made him sharper. In under 5 seconds, 3 of them were sprawled out on his front lawn, groaning like starving beasts. Blood from one man's lip smeared across the pavement, and the phone that had been recording shattered on the ground, screen cracked in half. Saint didn't charge in. He stood back, calculating, pulling something shiny from his coat. But before he could raise it, Liam had already turned, locking eyes with him. No fear, no trembling, just the deadly calm he had carried through raids in Ramadi. "This isn't over," Sant growled. "You think you won? You just started the wrong war, Marine." Liam bent down to pick up the fallen license plate, wiping off the dust with his sleeve. "Good," he said. "I've always been good at war. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies aren't the fanatics swinging bats in the night, but the familiar faces at the grocery store, the church, and the police station. The ones who sit at your table while hiding knives beneath their seats." Early the next morning, as sunlight filtered through the leaf-bare maple trees along Birchfield Street, a silver Jeep Cherokee pulled up in front of Liam's house. Cole Baker stepped out, long curly hair tied high, an old khaki jacket draped over her shoulder, and glasses that reflected the fatigue of someone far too familiar with the dark underbelly of America. She was 34, a freelance journalist who had followed human rights delegations to hotspots from Ferguson to Flint, had exposed police cover-up networks in Louisiana, and had received threats over an investigation into a secret reformatory camp in Mississippi. But never before had her fury risen like it did now, stepping into a yard smeared with blood, shattered glass, and the wreckage of the night before. Cole froze when she saw the Baker family lineage photo, the treasured frame from 1947, capturing 4 generations of Black Americans who had lived, worked, and fought in Hartford, now reduced to ash at the base of the ancestral altar. The handwritten letter from Liam's great-grandfather, penned in French and Creole and brought home from Haiti in 1923, was gone without a trace. "Bastards," Cole whispered, clenching her fists, nails digging into her skin. While Liam brewed coffee, the only thing left untouched after the rampage, Cole opened her document bag and pulled out a stack of files, maps, and dozens of photographs she'd collected over 4 months. 9 Black families have sold their homes and left Hartford in just the past 6 months, she said. All of them received anonymous threats, had their cars vandalized, and their windows smashed. No one's been arrested. The reports list them as property damage, no suspect identified. Liam flipped through the pages one by one. Names, addresses, timestamps. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a coordinated campaign. "Sheriff Eldrick, Saint's buddy," Cole continued. "They hunt together, play poker every Saturday. Of 6 official complaints, 5 were shelved due to insufficient evidence. 1 was rewritten entirely, flipping the victim into the instigator." Liam wasn't surprised, but he saw something worse than corruption. The suffocating silence of collective consent. Cole lowered her voice, holding out 2 missing persons files. Isaac Marin, the old Baptist pastor, and Felicity Grant, the youth leader. Both left town voluntarily after reporting Saint to the town council. You believe they didn't leave behind a single personal item? No phone. No goodbye note. She described a widowed woman living on the town's edge. The woman had once posted about discrimination at a local store. Within a week, her dog was poisoned, her car was towed without reason, and her power was cut for a false debt. 3 Black-owned businesses, a bakery, a barbershop, and an auto repair shop, had all gone bankrupt after being cut off from supply contracts by companies tied to Saint and his associates. They call it Peaceful Hartford, but underneath it's a spiderweb of white supremacist control, Cole stated firmly. Then she handed over the final sheet, a printout from a secret social media group, where members with aliases like Lion Guard 88 regularly posted training photos, flag burnings, and gatherings at a farm 19 miles southwest of town. "I don't have hard proof yet, but this is where they meet. An abandoned cattle farm. Now it's got electric fences, cameras, and unmarked trucks, but I haven't been able to get close enough." Liam nodded and folded the file. "We don't need proof to defend ourselves," he said, his gaze cold as forged steel from the Afghan desert. "But we will need proof to take down this entire system. Once. For good." Cole took his hand. There was no blood, no gunfire. But this time, the war wasn't coming from a government. It was rising from the hearts of those who had lost their faith in justice. Some calls need no explanation, just coordinates. And those who've walked through hell will show up, not for glory, not for reward, but for a promise made between souls who once held hands at the edge of life and death. After Cole left, the sun was already setting. Liam stood alone in the living room, where the family altar once stood, now a space filled with cold ash and dried blood. He opened an old encrypted phone, the kind he kept from his time in Somalia, even though it had been decommissioned by the government. Inside was a short list, only 4 names, under a simple heading. Red Line. The first name was Ronnie Bradley, a legendary sniper who once ambushed and eliminated 3 ISIS fighters in a single night from 1,200 meters, 1 bullet per target. But to Liam, Ronnie wasn't just a sharpshooter. He was the man who'd risked his life 3 times to pull him out of enemy fire when everyone else had retreated. They once swore, If one of us goes down, the rest will go to hell to pull him back. Liam made the call. No small talk. No explanations. There's a problem in Hartford. Racism. Organized. Need you. Ronnie simply replied, "Send the coordinates. I'll be there before sunset." Second name, Luca Burton, a bomb disposal expert who once smiled while defusing an IED hidden beneath a child's corpse. Luca was the kind of guy who made you nervous and reassured at the same time. He could sit in a minefield, whistling and eating an apple. When Liam called, Luca chuckled low and rough, then spoke as if he'd been waiting his whole life for this call. "I'm tired of consulting for rich school teachers. I miss the smell of TNT. I miss sleepless nights." In less than 16 hours, all three were reunited in front of Liam's house. Ronnie drove a bulletproof Lincoln Navigator SUV with a Barrett M82 long-range rifle mounted in the back. Luca arrived on a Yamaha Tenere motorcycle, carrying a backpack filled with military drones, smoke grenades, and a signal-jamming laptop. Liam stood between them, like the hinge reconnecting a door slammed shut by time. The team went inside and laid out maps and data that Cole had provided. They used civilian satellites combined with AI to reconstruct the layout of the farm, where Saint and his crew gathered. 3 sheet metal warehouses were spread around a central house with 2 truck exits. A 6-meter watchtower stood in the northwest corner, possibly for lookout or sniping. Cole suddenly returned with an original 1987 map, taken from the town's land registry. "Here," she pointed to a nearly faded symbol on the old copy. "An underground tunnel, about 30 feet long, connects the main house to the forest edge. It used to hide bootleg liquor during Prohibition. If they use it as an escape route, we'll need to cut it off first." Liam nodded. On a whiteboard in the living room, he wrote each objective with a dry erase marker. Not just destroy the site, but clearly gather evidence of weapon stockpiling, capture internal activity on video, identify all key members, trace financial records linked to Sheriff Eldrick, and finally, expose the entire white supremacy network in Hartford. Ronnie checked his watch and nodded. "When do we strike?" Luca smirked. "Hopefully 2:13, just like old times." Liam gave the order, short and sharp, like every time before entering a kill zone. Sunday, 2:13 a.m. That's when they're drunkest, least alert. They think no one will touch them. They're wrong. In a house still reeking of dried blood and smoke, 3 men sat side by side, Ott looking like heroes, not wearing medals. But if anyone asked, who stands when justice is buried? They were the answer. Night in Hartford was never peaceful. It merely pretended to sleep, while darkness swallowed the secrets a whole town tried to bury under cracked layers of painted-on justice. But this time, the night didn't belong to them. It was an ally of Liam and his brothers, men who had walked through hell and carried the gaze of those who had stared death in the face and kept walking. 2:03 a.m. Ronnie's Predator X4 drone hovered silently overhead, its hum no louder than the wind. Through the infrared lens, the screen displayed faint glows of 9 armed guards, each one patrolling in 15-minute intervals. Inside the main house, 3 men in suits, one of them resembling Saint, stood over a map and tablet, gesturing in what looked like orders. Ronnie muttered into the radio. "This isn't just a gathering. It's a paramilitary training camp." At the same time, Luca finished setting up 3 Y-Signal Jammer 900 devices, next-gen signal blockers smuggled out of an Israeli firm. Each emitted a wave radius of 200 meters, enough to render every phone, radio, and internal GPS unit into a useless brick. No one in there would call for help, no backup, no social media, no live streams. Dressed in all black, Liam silently crawled through an abandoned drainage pipe to the north, an old route once used to flush out livestock waste. He paced every step, avoiding every camera angle, using dead zone shifting tactics, skills he'd honed during a 2014 raid on a drug lord's compound in Panama. Ronnie slipped toward the eastern watchpost. Drawing from his Fallujah experience, he used a dull knife and a garrote cord, executing sleep-hold techniques that rendered both guards unconscious in under 9 seconds. No blood. No screams. Their bodies were pulled into a bush, hidden so cleanly it was as if they never existed. Inside the third warehouse, Liam and Luca found something that made them both pause for several seconds. 32 AR-15 rifles, some modified into semi-automatics. 18 crates of 5.56 millimeter ammunition were neatly stacked, alongside 3 unopened boxes of C4. On top of that, a pile of documents bearing the logo of Black Harrier Security, a private military firm previously tied to protest crackdowns in Charleston. Luca quickly mounted mini-cameras into the corners, each one live-streaming back through a multi-layered VPN to a hidden server. Every bit of data, footage of the weapons, documents, and internal activity, was being recorded, prepared for the day the truth would be unveiled. But then, the silence was shattered. A sharp scream rang out from the hallway outside the warehouse. Liam and Luca dashed out, only to see Ronnie pinned down by 3 men, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. One of them struck him again with the butt of a rifle. Blood splattered like midnight rain. Saint emerged, as if waiting for this moment. He stood in the glare of newly switched-on truck headlights, holding a sawed-off Remington 870, shouting, "Welcome to my house, Black Marine." No more mocking. His eyes burned with unhinged madness. Beneath the headlights, the barrel pointed directly at Liam. Liam reached for his knife, but Luca grabbed his arm. "We can't fight back. Not yet. They've got a whole nest of snipers." Ronnie was dragged away, his feet scraping the ground. Blood trickled from his lips, but he still smirked, as if these men were nothing more than amateur actors in a cheap rehearsal. "I was held by the Taliban for 5 days. You clowns are just their intern program." The armored truck engine roared to life, kicking up dust and a fury yet to be unleashed. Liam watched, his eyes burning. He knelt to pick up the silver seal badge Ronnie had dropped in the scuffle, the keepsake awarded after the 2012 hostage rescue mission in Yemen. Now, everything had spiraled beyond plan. But Liam didn't back down. Not when a brother had fallen. Not when justice was shackled by blood and lies. And certainly not when the monster inside him had awakened. Sometimes, to pull someone back from the edge, you have to be willing to walk into darkness deeper than death itself. But for Liam, darkness was no stranger. It was the place where he had learned to win in silence and avenge with reason. Right after Ronnie was taken, Liam and Luca didn't sleep. All night, the two sat around the wooden table in Liam's basement, eyes locked on screens, still transmitting heat signals and drone feeds. At 4:52 a.m., a flicker of hope emerged when Luca detected a faint RFID signal coming from Ronnie's tactical vest, the kind issued exclusively to Red Line team members, embedded with military-grade tracking chips. The coordinates led them to a warehouse complex on the outskirts of Clayview, nearly 31 miles northeast of Hartford. According to tax records, the warehouse used to belong to a transport company, abandoned since 2009 after a money-laundering lawsuit led to bankruptcy. Liam and Luca drove without headlights, pulling up just short of Clayview's boundary. Over the next 10 hours, they conducted non-stop reconnaissance. 6 guards counted, K-9 units, an infrared camera network, and most notably, a black Ford Transit truck with fake military plates. Luca suspected they've got someone inside the security or military apparatus. Using infiltration techniques from Ramadi, Liam posed as a private security contractor and slipped through the rear gate. He planted a jamming device inside the alarm control box, cutting off internal signal loops without triggering the central alert. At the same time, Luca staged a decoy explosion 500 meters away, drawing 2 guards out to investigate. The scent of smoke, flashing lights, and electronically simulated detonations sowed confusion, splitting the enemy's focus. Inside the warehouse, Liam found Ronnie, his wrists bound by steel cuffs, slumped over a metal table, body trembling from electric burns across his chest. A small syringe lay beside him, labeled fenflurax, for medical supervision only, a powerful psychostimulant banned since 2012. As soon as Liam removed the gag from Ronnie's mouth, he let out a weak but unmistakable smirk. "I knew you wouldn't let me die like a chump." While Luca extracted footage from the interrogation room camera, they captured a critical audio clip. The cleansing operation across 3 states has been funded. Capitol Ridge approved it. The senator signed off personally. The voice belonged to a bald man, later confirmed by Cole to be Mason Harkley, owner of Black Harrier Security. The 3 escaped through a side exit, following an old stormwater trench. But alarms blared. The enemy had realized someone was missing. A chase ensued, but thanks to a pre-planned drone exit route mapped by Luca, they slipped into Mason Woods. Ronnie, blood still seeping from his temple, gripped Liam's hand. "Saint isn't working alone. I heard him mention a closed-door meeting in Capitol Ridge with political investors. This isn't just a racist militia. It's a pawn in something way bigger." That evening, Cole arrived with a secret fax copy, smuggled from a former state Justice Department staffer. It outlined a political campaign funding plan, signed by Senator Harold Keene, Republican, state of Montridge. The document clearly stated its aim: support organizations preserving traditional cultural identity by the 10th Amendment. Liam sat frozen. Ronnie, lips still crusted with blood, said, "This is no longer just a town's problem. This is a racially driven social campaign, with a budget, a network, and political cover." Luca whispered, "We're not just fighting for your home, Liam. We're going up against an entire machine. Capitol Ridge, on paper, is a federal logistics hub processing over 20,000 packages a day. But beneath the legal facade, it serves as a transit point for cash, weapons, and top-secret files for a covert network quietly reshaping America's ethnic map." Liam, Ronnie, and Luca didn't arrive fueled by rage. They came with cold calculation and a resolute purpose: to expose those who manipulate from the shadows. They split into 3 entry paths. Liam moved in through the southern industrial drainage system. Ronnie infiltrated from the rooftop using a rappel line, and Luca snuck in through the tech conduit, the least monitored route. Each carried an audio recorder, an infrared camera, and a copy of the internal 2017 floor plan provided by Cole. 10:49 p.m. The pale yellow glow from industrial lights made the area look like a giant steel beehive. But inside, no one mistook it for just a warehouse. Each zone had its own, encrypted with internal ID panels, military style. Suddenly, a sharp zing rang out, a red laser beam striking just inches in front of Luca's foot. He instantly dove behind the nearest rack. Ronnie shouted over comms, "They've got snipers, and not the local kind." Drone feed confirmed it. 2 foreign marksmen in unmarked uniforms, equipped with FNS, CAR rifles, and thermal scopes. This was a clear sign. Capitol Ridge was employing Eastern European mercenaries, straight out of the private Black Ops playbook. Liam approached the main building, a 4-story concrete structure with bulletproof glass, lights blazing like it was midday. Inside, Saint was in a meeting, but this time, he wasn't the one doing the shouting. Across from him sat 3 men in high-end suits, one bald with an East Coast accent, one wearing a Rolex, a small American flag pin on his lapel, and the third, the executive vice president of Pexar Energy, one of the 5 largest energy conglomerates in the U.S. Luca placed an audio amplifier on the 3rd-floor window. The words they captured made all 3 men's blood run cold. "Saint, you handle the trash. We've pushed property values in Woodmere up 24% since that slum was cleaned out. The governor's busy with re-election. Don't let this leak. Every dollar spent on ethnic stabilization returns 12 in profit." At that moment, Liam burst into the meeting room. No mask, no disguise. He threw a photo onto the walnut table. Ronnie, bruised and bloodied from electroshock torture, with darkened eyes and dried blood on his lip, printed from the video Cole had recorded the night before. "This is how you do business?" he asked, his voice low but forged like steel. Saint reached for his gun, but a sharp crack rang out from the rooftop. Ronnie's Remington 700 sniper round tore through Saint's gun hand. He screamed, the Glock hitting the floor, blood spraying like a ruptured pipe. Chaos erupted in the room. 2 bodyguards lunged forward. Luca entered through the side door, tossing in a flash grenade, blinding but non-lethal. In less than 12 seconds, the entire room was neutralized using tactical reflex drills once employed during the ambassador rescue in Mogadishu. The Pexar 5OP was restrained with his own Gucci tie. One of the businessmen had wet himself, stammering, I was just investing in real estate." Liam confiscated over 430 pages of documents, including bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, allocations from the Ethnic Research Fund, and internal emails with an attachment titled Clean Zone Plan V2 PD BF. On their way out, Ronnie glanced back at Saint, clutching his shattered arm, moaning in pain. "No one's coming to save you. We're not alone anymore." Before disappearing into the night, Liam leaned in and whispered into the vice president's ear. "This time, I'm not fighting for my home. I'm fighting so my child won't grow up in a country where skin color still decides who gets to live." Less than an hour after the sweat-drenched, tactical raid at Capitol Ridge, the sound of police sirens blared through the air as if Hartsford had never witnessed a night so explosive. The local force, long regarded as Saint's extended arm, showed up for the first time not to look the other way, but to confront the very crimes they once helped conceal. Saint was dragged out of the main building, blood seeping through the wrap on his hand, eyes burning with rage and pain. He tried to stand tall, but couldn't fight the dizziness. Spotting Liam at the edge of the compound, Saint sneered and shouted amidst the swarm of cameras and police officers. "You think you've won, you black piece of trash? I've got the courts, I've got lawyers, I've got television." But those threats held no weight anymore. Just a minute later, 3 unmarked black SUVs rolled into the scene. Their doors opened, and FBI agents stepped out, dressed in black suits, name tags glinting under the harsh beams of headlights and flashlights. Among them was Federal Agent Horatio Klein, summoned by Cole through an emergency reporting line from the Free Press Coalition. He had previously led operations dismantling cross-state criminal syndicates, and this time, his presence cast a death sentence over the entire extremist network. The 3 businessmen in suits, once smug in their conference room, now stood with heads bowed, their faces pale, as Agent Klein read off the charges. Federal money laundering, conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism, funding a nationwide racial supremacy network, employing foreign mercenaries on U.S. soil, 43 semi-automatic AR-15 rifles, 12 unregistered Glocks, 6 Dragunov sniper rifles, and over $200,000 in cash were found in the warehouse, all entered into evidence. Additionally, a laptop containing the Clear Line Phase 4 plan, designed to alter the demographic makeup of 18 southern towns, stood as irrefutable proof. The Hartford police chief, once photographed with Saint at a beer festival, refused to comment to the press. But within 24 hours, he was suspended and placed under federal investigation for willfully ignoring hate crime reports. As Saint was loaded into the back of a police cruiser, he refused to abandon his threatening tone. Behind the tinted glass, he turned to glare at Liam and hissed, "This is just the beginning." Liam didn't flinch. He simply replied, loud enough to be heard, "Yes, the beginning of your end." The next morning, national television broadcast news of the Capitol Ridge takedown, describing it as the largest racial extremist bust since 1991. One MSNBC commentator even called it a political earthquake in the Midwest. On social media, the video of Liam pulling Ronnie from the back of the truck, his hands soaked in blood but eyes still blazing, spread like wildfire. Marine saves Marine. Justice from within, and Fordont Hartsford Uncovered, trended within 2 hours. Cole, the sister who had quietly gathered evidence over the past 6 months, was invited to speak on CNN. She said little, only reading a single line from her father's journal, a former pastor in Hartford. When the darkness is thickest, sometimes the one who carries the light isn't a preacher, but the man who once led his brothers through hell. Liam declined all interviews. When an NBC reporter asked him, "Do you have a message for those still fighting for justice?" he simply said, "Real ones don't need speeches. Action is enough." A week had passed since the blood-soaked night at Capitol Ridge. As the late summer sun beamed down on the scorched roof tiles of the house on Stonewell Street, Liam Baker, the man who had survived the battlefields of Mogadishu, Ramadi, and Kandahar, put on an old shirt, picked up a paintbrush, and began repairing his porch. He didn't hire help, didn't ask anyone. But every nail hammered, every board he fastened to the wall, was a declaration. "I'm still here, and this is my home." Cole showed up Wednesday morning, driving a small truck loaded with white timber boards, 3 cans of Sherwin-Williams paint, a Milwaukee screwdriver set, and 2 cups of hot coffee. Not much was said. They just worked. Between them was the silence of those who had seen darkness and vowed never to let it return. That same day, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, knocked on the door, shyly handing Liam a glass vase with a small crack. On a wrinkled note, scrawled in uneven handwriting, it read, "My name is Margot. Mommy says you're a hero. I brought you flowers." Liam bent down, gently patted her head, his gaze warm, something rarely seen in him since leaving the military. In the afternoon, a middle-aged white man in a plaid shirt and baseball cap walked up. In his hands was a case of Founder's beer. He spoke without meeting Liam's eyes. "I live 3 houses down. I saw what happened. I didn't do anything. And I'm sorry." He placed the beer on the step and turned to leave. But before he reached the bottom, Liam said, "Then don't stay silent next time." At 6 p.m. on CNN, a brief shot of Liam, shirt damp with sweat, paintbrush in hand, appeared with the caption, "The Soldier and the Town," a return that stirred the conscience of a community. One commentator stated clearly, "This isn't just a fight against violence. It's a wake-up call that any small town in America could become Hartford if we don't stay vigilant." The FBI invited Liam to join a task force on domestic extremism prevention, but he politely declined, leaving only these words, "I don't fight for titles or contracts. I just want people like, or unlike me, to live in peace in their own homes. Ronnie returned to volunteer at the Veterans Clinic. Luca accepted a teaching role at a private tactical training academy in Colorado. They stayed in touch. The group chat among the three of them was titled Silent Vow. After weeks of editing, Cole published her book, The Returnee and the Town That Wouldn't Stay Silent. It was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in Investigative Journalism. One passage read, "Liam didn't come to save the town. He came to reclaim his home." But that act, in itself, saved the soul of Hartford. One Sunday afternoon, Liam sat on the freshly painted white steps, holding a cup of black coffee. No more shattered windows, no more hateful graffiti, no more wary glances from neighbors. A light breeze, sparrows chirping, the scent of new wood. Cole sat beside him, reading a small newspaper article about their actions. Suddenly, she asked, "What if they come back?" Liam looked toward the horizon, eyes deep like the years spent on battlefields. He replied without hesitation, "Then this time, the whole town will rise with me." In a small town, once cloaked in the shadow of prejudice, Liam Baker chose not to bow. Not with shouts, but with action. Silent, relentless, and righteous. He didn't fight for fame or revenge. He fought so that one day, no one would have to explain why they exist in the place called home. This story isn't just about a soldier who returned. It's about a society standing at the crossroads between silence and voice. It forces us to ask, what will we do when injustice knocks at our door? Will we choose to be silent witnesses or the ones who change the course of things? What do you think? This is just one part in a powerful series of stories about courage, justice, and transformation. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to Black Strength Stories so you won't miss the next story, one that might just make you see the world through new eyes.